Okay. Oh, good. None of that was recorded.
Yeah, no, you're
I
good.
hope
Don't worry
not.
about it. Don't worry about it. I got you. Um, okay, so everyone, this is Jason Rubenstein. I hope I'm saying it right. Rubenstein, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So Jason Rubenstein is the co-founder of ChampTrax and HearMeCheer. So I guess Jason, you can just sort of take a few minutes, sort of introduce yourself and explain a little about what ChampTrax is and everything that is involved with that.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks for having me call. It's good to hear from you guys. It's been a while since, maybe a couple years since we saw each other
No, that's
down in Vegas. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so Elias and I actually met with CBSN when we were in Orlando, and he knows Richard as well from Toronto. And yeah, so basically we were working on this technology for player tracking for youth athletes, and we were actually down in Arizona, and basically it's like a tag-based system where you track athletes as they move, and you can derive their speed and workload and such from these accelerometers. And then we were actually down in Arizona this March. There was about like 10 teams in the MLB that had interest in using their system for like minor leagues and international affiliations. And basically coronavirus kind of swept in, and we had to like reevaluate the business. So we started working on HearMeCheer almost immediately. We had the idea, and basically I've been working on it since then. HearMeCheer allows, it's like a web app that allows fans and event viewers to participate in the crowd using their phones and devices that have microphones in them. So we like add the sound together and can create this crowd sound and engagement from remote fans. So we've worked with a few clubs. Like we worked with ESPN, did all their boxing events for when they were in MGM Grand for 2 months, and we working with the Red Bulls tomorrow. So that should be pretty cool, and a few others. Um, but yeah,
So Hear Me Cheer is it's like sort of like how they pump in the fan noise in MLB, only it's like live.
yeah, it's like real people are participating. Um, you know, it's yeah. So basically, you could be watching the event and have your phone out on your coffee table or something, and just be cheering, or you could be on your phone on Twitter as well, as long as you have our website up in the background, and be cheering and booing a bad call, or whenever the Astros come to the plate, you could boom and bang the trash cans against them or whatever you want, whatever these fans at home want to do. Because at the end of the day, that's such a big thing about sports, is being able to have the players hear your voice and be able to communicate with the other fans. So yeah, we've had great feedback from a lot of the users so far.
So I know you kind of talked about how you got involved with ChampTrax. Is there any more like background about yourself, sort of how you got into the sports industry?
Yeah, I was always interested in sports. When I was in UMass, when I was in college at UMass, I studied sport management and I studied economics, and so I feel like that gave good kind of insight into the sports industry. And I always found it interesting, but at the same time, like I always had a big passion for baseball, and I think it's important with any industry to always just kind of evaluate the landscape, and it's always like constantly shifting dynamic, especially now things are so fast moving with technology. Something that may be common today won't be common tomorrow. So I was really big on analytics in very early on, and did a lot of research in baseball, and worked with Richard and you before, and always was very entrepreneurial. And yeah, I mean, essentially, like COVID is just another thing that changes business rather drastically for a bit, but it's just another accelerator into development. So it's important to think about what's going to be next. Analytics we're obviously growing, and now are so prominent in sports and baseball in particular, and we're just in another transitory period now.
Great, yeah. So I guess you could sort of say COVID actually sort of helped you guys because it helped you sort of develop that technology.
Yeah, I mean, we came up with it given the circumstance. We came up with it like right after the Nuggets and Jazz game got canceled. I believe it was against the Nuggets. I know Jazz were playing that game, and they pulled all the fans out of the venue, and we were like, wow, like no, they're not even letting this game happen with fans. Like definitely when sports come back, there's going to be no fans. So we figured there's a great chance for us to have a way to connect fans who are not at the venue itself with the event. And we want to do that through audio now, but we think in the future, like you think about sports in general, or even live entertainment, like the majority of viewers are going to be away from the event itself. Think of an NFL game. You could have an average of 14 million viewers on a Sunday and only 50 or 60,000 in the stadium itself. So being able to connect those people to the event more is a great opportunity, we think. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it helped per se, but it definitely created an opportunity. Or I wouldn't even say an opportunity, just increased demand for new products, or willingness to explore them, I guess.
So, what does a day-to-day look like in your position?
Yeah, I mean, with a startup, you definitely do a lot of different roles. Yeah, I mean, there's not really one day that's the same as the last. Like for us, I manage our sales team. I basically work on the code and committing new updates. I do sales myself, going on meetings with partners and outreach, talking to investors and working on information like that. There's really never any shortage of things to work on. Yeah, I mean, some of them are new to me. Some of them I've been doing my whole life, or at least my whole working life, like the data analytics side of it. But, dealing with the financial aspects, we have a good team that, has helped me kind of get a better grasp of it. And yeah, I mean, there's just constantly new challenges, I would say, every day. But it's definitely busy, from like 9 in the morning till pretty late at night, because you're working with people all over the world who aren't really adhering to the Eastern time zone. You're working with people in Japan, they're 12 hours ahead of you.
So, with ChampTrax, you're talking about how it's like player tracking. So, like, what kind of data does it track specifically? And like, sort of, what technology does it use?
Yeah, so it's RFID technology, and basically you're able to pull like XYZ coordinates and over timestamps. And so from there you can determine like a player's path, and then from that derive their like velocity, acceleration, distance traveled, average speed, and then further like workload based on various criteria pertaining to those other data points. And yeah, the thing about what we were doing is, or what we still are doing, but just been more focused on HearMeCheer right now as a product, is that it's so we can make this technology for very cheap. So our target is to go after the youth market and allow them to, use this technology, because it's clearly beneficial for maintaining players' health and in development. So we think when these players are really young, they're obviously very moldable into, better athletes, and they don't really, and they may not understand their bodies very well. So it's important for them to kind of have access to this. And so yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure, yeah. That's fine with Jason.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, no. So with ChampTrax, with the player tracking, you mentioned how it tracks player movement. So I'm guessing on the MLB level, we have StatCast, right? So that sort of stuff, and like Hawkeye, they all track player movement, correct? But on the minor league level, where you don't have StatCast or you don't have anything to track players other than like TrackMan, would that be especially helpful for minor league teams?
Yeah, so it's very helpful for minor league teams. Is really was our target when we were in Arizona, is because we could outfit a team for under $1,000, and they could reuse the system. They could take it on the road with them. They could use it in training, and it's very easy to set up.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, for the minor leagues, it's important because that's really where they are learning the most. You could say, like, once they get to the
Mhm.
major leagues, there's less time to focus on these training aspects, I would imagine, because
Okay.
more media opportunities and whatever. But when they're in the minor leagues, making sure they're taking efficient path to the ball, having a
Mhm.
quick first step, you know,
Okay.
and even
Right.
aligning them in different positions to catch
Mhm.
balls most effectively. I don't know. I mean, I can't speak
Sure.
exactly to the uses as well as maybe you can, but I know for sure that it is useful, just given that people are using it at some level.
Right. So follow up. Obviously, getting the routes to the ball, there's a little bit of running involved, but the most, I'd argue, the most energy exerting part of baseball is pitching and hitting, which are more so like dynamic actions that happen in one spot. And that's where, at least in the baseball industry, that's where the main concern with fatigue and workload lies. So is there a way for this um, technology to track fatigue in pitchers and batters like in like one spot? Like, because
Um,
for example, the motor sleeve, it helps us track workload in pitchers, right? Obviously, we would ideally not want our pitchers wearing a motor sleeve in game because we want pitchers to focus on executing pitches and not fixing their sleeve in between the bats. So there's another piece of technology that can help us um,
yeah, I mean,
track that workload. That would be ideal.
so the way that you really track fatigue from location data is just from like repeated exercise. Like if you're sprinting 50 times over a course of a game, like what's your acceleration? Like what's your time? Like what's your top speed? Like how many
Mm-hmm.
accelerations do you have? Are all valid data points for determining workload in say a soccer player or a football player.
Mm-hmm.
In
Yeah.
baseball, those repeated movements aren't as common, except for like a pitcher. They're having very frequent repeated movement. Um, and honestly, the Motus sleeve is probably better for tracking pitchers. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the value of having, this information for fielders is pretty obvious, I think, because like if you know exactly what someone's first step is and like their top speed, like acceleration, you could determine optimal points in the field for them based on like
Mm-hmm.
if you pair it up with like the hitter's spray chart and stuff, and you could say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
here's our optimal alignment, here's where we're covering the most ground. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if it really would work in the same way as what you're saying for the Motus sleeve because that's like very, very targeted, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, like the main thing is like I feel like baseball as an industry wants to find better ways of quantifying workload without needing to wear some sort of sleeve, which has shown that it's just not ideal, especially in game.
I
And
mean,
like hitters, especially like hitters, like what's a sleeve gonna even do, right? Um, so there's in terms of workload, I think the most important part is getting the pitchers and the hitters. But I understand what you're saying in terms of the fielders.
yeah, I mean, look, like it certainly could track fatigue in those players. Like, there's just not enough literature on the subject from a baseball standpoint for me to really be able to
Right.
make that
Okay.
determination. Like, I wouldn't want to falsely
Sure.
say it, but I know for other sports like soccer and
Mm-hmm.
basketball, repeated
Yeah.
sprints, like, it definitely happen. Like, it could
Oh yeah.
certainly happen, for a high frequency position like
Mm-hmm.
shortstop or something. You
Yeah.
know, say, okay,
Oh
they're
yeah. I.
this fast. Like,
Mm-hmm.
here's the reaction time.
Right.
Yeah.
I no. I totally see the value for like football or soccer or basketball. Is there like anyone else on the market is doing anything similar to you, or are you the only one?
No, there are definitely other people who use somewhat similar technology. Like Catapult is a leader in the space, but they're much like higher priced and more targeted towards the pro teams and
Mm-hmm.
elite universities. Whereas we're focused on like the U15 perfect game tournament or something along those lines that
Mm-hmm.
uses TrackMan right now and has a desire for this advanced data, but doesn't really have the means to pay for you know
Mm-hmm.
$40,000 setup for every game extra for
Right.
that would rather
Right.
$2,000 or something.
Right. Do you think like eventually with pro and maybe even college sports with like as Hawkeye keeps growing, would that eliminate the purpose of your tech and it'll
Well,
just be limited to like just high school and maybe not even like big high school showcases?
yeah, I mean, it's possible. Like, there's a limitation to using camera-based systems because you need to have a very, like, you need to have a pretty dynamic setup of an arena or a stadium in order to set that up. Like, you can't put it in your backyard or anything like that to
Right.
by camera. It has to be like a certain number of feet away from the field and a certain elevation to capture the entirety.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for us, it's just like a system of anchors that you could place in the stands or something, or
Okay.
like tape it to a wall.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I got. Do you miss Kristaps Porzingis?
No, he got beat up in like Latvia by a bunch of gangsters. So
Okay.
he can't win
That's
that
all
play.
that's all I got.
How's he
That's
going to be able
everything
to
I
beat
got.
Giannis in the playoffs if he can't, beat up these random smokes in a bar?
I'm good.
Yeah, so Jason, I guess Rich kind of touched on this, but I had a question that was, how is ChampTrax keeping up, or how do they plan to keep up with like the ever-changing technology in baseball? Since we know baseball is one of the sports, it's very competitive in terms of like, especially the tracking and analytics.
Yeah, I mean, I think it generally takes some teams to adopt new technology. There's constantly new needs and they're constantly evaluating new technologies that can help them win games. And um, yeah, I mean, it's more so like taking what the industry needs and adding on to it. I think right now there's a lot of great technology that is still in its kind of nascent stages for a lot of teams. You take the Richard, what's the name of those cameras that they use? Edgermetronic cameras, right?
Yeah, ugh, Edgartronic cameras.
Yeah, like Edgertronic cameras, and some teams may not even have these or only have a couple. When it's great to have these at new facilities. I mean, I personally think as the minor leagues contract a bit over the next few years, you're going to see a high level of investment in the minor league teams that remain, because like the problem you have now is if you have like say 6 minor league teams and like let's say 80% of the players are worth investing in, like they have to spread their resources across these teams so they hit all these players, but like they're not really maximizing any of them individually. So basically if you cut that down to 4 teams, then all of a sudden you have 33% more resources to spend on those remaining teams. So it's I think that there was going to be a continued investment in that area. And I think also like if coronavirus subsides sometime soon without totally destroying the economy, it could be similar to World War II, after World War II, when there was a record number of youth people participating in sports because their parents were just trying to get them out of the house and do something active. So, yeah, I mean, but as for the specific needs of MLB, the best people to talk about that would probably be like people such as Richard and others that work in analytical capacities within sport. I mean, for me, it's more so talking to them, understanding what their needs are, and working on a solution to figure that out.
So
There could also be
go
there could
ahead.
also be some like cool value for this in like the DR where it's not so tech savvy over there and it probably won't be anytime soon. And coaches don't really know a lot about what they're doing in many cases. And pitchers and hitters and everyone just does a ton of running, ton of
Right.
weird exercising. So like the DR might be like an ideal spot.
Yeah, like the DR, Venezuela, places that scouts may not generally get to go to many times. So being able to, leverage the technology and get as much information as possible on as few scouting trips as possible allows them to, make those trips worthwhile. Like, instead of having to go 10 times to see the guy, like you go twice and use as much technology as you can to glean maximum information.
Mm-hmm. Would you ever consider like partnering with other tech companies to I guess, expand what you're doing. So like, for example, Pro Play AI is I don't know if you know what that is, but they do, they break down pitching biomechanics. You just take a video of a pitcher from his open side, and using markerless motion capture, they break down pitching mechanics, and that's super helpful for obviously diagnosing kinematics. It can also help with like eventually with like workload management. Like, would you ever consider like pairing up with those types of companies to, like, I guess, provide clients with a lot more information?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely are open to partnerships. Like we're partnered with Tech Mahindra, which is a leading Indian tech firm right now. And yeah, I mean, for us, like the way we see ChampTrax is actually we're more of a software company than a hardware company, because basically the software we've built to evaluate the information that we get from our hardware is agnostic to hardware. So basically, if you had better tags or a better system of gathering this data, you could still use that with our software, and it would just flow through, and you could get all the same insights. The reason that we use our hardware right now is we're just waiting for the industry to catch up on price, and then once we have a more, I wouldn't say, if another solution were to come out that was more cost effective, like we could easily just plug and play our software in there, is how we kind of see it. But yeah, so we're definitely open to partnerships that can add value for, like, if we're going after the same clients and can add value to each other's offerings, and certainly worthwhile.
Got it.
Okay, so I have a couple more questions, and I'll open it up if Chris or Andrew have any questions, or if Rich has anything else. What are like the biggest challenges facing a startup company such as yourself in the sports industry?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the sport industry is, very similar to other industries in the sense that, from a startup sense, that when you're a small startup and you only have, like, say 10 to 15 people working with the company, like, different things are going to come up that you have to work on that you weren't necessarily working on yesterday. And also, you don't really have the resources to work on a bunch of different things at once. You have to have a specific goal in mind, and you have to work towards it. You can't say, like, okay, we're going to have to do this and have to do that. You don't have the resources to do that. We're not Amazon that's saying, okay, we're going to dedicate like 10,000 people to Twitch and 10,000 people to e-commerce and 10,000 people to AWS. Like, we only have 15 people or so. So it's important to stay focused, and that's a challenge, especially when you're dealing with other competitors who may have more resources at their hands. There's also issues of, proof of concept and showing that your system works. And we've been fortunate to have some clients that trusted us from the beginning, and, got some, and we were able to work with them, and they were able to benefit from our technology. So, yeah, I mean, I'd say the same startups that we face are pretty similar to other startups. It's just a different business, it's different industries than say, healthcare.
And I guess my last question, this is sort of different. Usually we have people on who work for teams, but since this group is sort of about people, it's called future baseball GMs, but like you don't have to be want to be a GM in the future. So like, what tips would you have for like a young person who maybe has an idea for a startup company? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, so the best advice I would give is work on it. Like, I mean, and it doesn't have to be your full-time job off the bat. I mean, you see a lot of these success stories. Like, you see Zuckerberg and Bezos and Elon Musk and all these guys that started their own companies and got huge. And that's like not the reality of the situation that's like winning the lottery pretty much as far as startups go. Like, most startups don't just become worth tens of billions of dollars within 2 years of starting them. Like, it's just the fact of the matter. And it's important to, be cautious with your own life and make sure that, like, if it does become your full-time job, that you're ready to take the risks that come along with that. Yeah, but I think it's definitely worthwhile to work your butt off and try to make it a reality as much as you can afford to. Like, I'm fortunate that, I come from a background that I have some sort of a cushion, and I say that a lot, that I wouldn't be able to work on ChampTrax full time since COVID started if I didn't have, the necessary support system. If I was like paying for all my family's meals, I wouldn't be able to do that. So it's important to really assess the situation and go about it cautiously. But I think it's really worthwhile to do, like, if you're working 40, 50 hours a week, like spend 10, 15 hours working on your own startup and see what you can get done. I think it's definitely a rewarding process. And, who knows, like it might take off and be something big, but you never know unless you try it. But it's important to be cautious, if that makes sense.
All right, so now it's just open questions for Andrew, Chris, or Rich, if you guys want to ask anything.
I think I'm good.
All right, well,
I sort of missed the beginning. So what exactly is ChampTrax? Or like, what is your goal, your final goal, I guess I would say?
So basically we have two different products with ChampTrax. We have HearMeCheer and we have our player tracking system. And basically with ChampTrax, we designed this player tracking system for youth athletes. So what we want to do is be able to get it into, AAU tournaments and youth baseball events, and basically allow these players to understand how their body is operating and their workload and their health, and, develop better as athletes through this technology that's generally only been available to very high levels. And with HearMeCheer, it's a remote cheering system that allows fans to participate in their favorite events from, the comfort of their home. So they can become part of the crowd just from, using their iPhone or tablet. So yeah, in the long run, we definitely want to, connect with that underserved segment of the market, for whether it's youth athletes or, fans that can't afford $10,000 tickets to go to a game to still be, cheering for their team.
Sure. That sounds interesting and very useful for nowadays, to be honest. Because I know over here in Florida, we at least for our youth, some parents do stay out in the field, but technically the rule is that parents aren't even allowed to sit on the bleachers, at least here in Florida. And yeah, it is tough right now. So
yeah, it's a really difficult situation, and you just want everyone to stay healthy. And I think even when you think of the youth sports, like from a cheering standpoint, like there are times that people will, and Eric knows this from Perfect Game, like you might have teams that come from like Michigan all the way down to Texas to watch for their players to play there. And most of the parents won't travel, so to be able to watch and have their kids and cheer for their kids could be something cool. Like generally for us with HearMeCheer, we've been working with much larger clients. Like we work with ESPN and the Red Bulls and stuff. But I definitely think there's a great opportunity when you talk about youth sports and as people travel around, to continue to have a chance to cheer for their kids or whatever.
no, for sure, I totally agree with that. Especially at least when I used to play, my parents used to work ridiculous amount of hours, and they couldn't always make it to those tournaments that were really early in the morning, or but that's interesting though. I like that. That's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can even like maybe talk to like national teams, like high school national teams. So like, for example, the Canadian national team sometimes goes to like Australia or Japan or like in South America to play in tournaments, right? Like parents won't always go, but it would be a cool way for them.
Yeah. And we always make it free for users. So like parents would never have to pay to cheer or anything. It's all just, they toss a sponsor on the site and then that sponsor will pay for, everyone to use it. And getting the exposure. Yeah, should you just itch your chin with a baseball? Nah, this guy.
That's a flex, honestly. That's a flex.
Definitely a flex.
Ball is life.
Ball is life. It's not a flex. It's I need a life.
So who do you guys think? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say thanks for doing this. I had a question, but you pretty much answered it about like in terms of like money. Cause I know for like business start, like small businesses or businesses that start, it's usually tough in the beginning. So like, yeah, like I've personally thought about going for like okay, so a little bit about me, just basically I like baseball, but also I actually started a business with a friend of mine, and the thing is that like money has been like a main issue, like had to like halt what we were doing because like I guess money was like the main like issue, like in terms of like how are we gonna pay researchers, how are we gonna do this, how are we gonna do that, and it's just refreshing what you're saying, you know, it's really refreshing. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just important to be. Yeah, I mean, look, it's just something that doesn't get talked about enough, to be honest. Like, and I think it's great. You know, you should definitely continue to explore and try to work on it. Like, we were working on ChampTrax since 2018 is when it was founded initially, and I didn't.
Wow.
Like, none of us started working on it full time until, like, I guess the winter of this year. So definitely took a lot of time for us to kind of get off the ground, but it's a really rewarding process, I would say, and one that it's worth sticking out if you really believe in the idea.
Awesome. Yeah. Another question. So you don't currently work for like a major league team, right? Like, or you just do consulting or none of that?
No, I don't do any consult. I used to work for TrackMan, if you're familiar with them. When I was in college, I worked for them for 2 years, and then I worked for their office in Stanford, and so I've been around baseball, and I used to work for a company that sold data to baseball teams with Eric and Richard, and that's how we met originally.
Okay.
Now we're best friends.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Me and Richard actually have a secret handshake that we haven't gotten to do in 2 years.
Okay.
Years or
I
something.
miss it so much. You didn't go to Cornell, by the way, right?
No,
I know you didn't.
I'm at my girlfriend's apartment right now.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm like, you did not go to Cornell. You're not smart enough.
Not a corn dog. That's not their mascot.
No, you're not.
All right. Well, if there was no other questions, Jason, thanks for coming on, man. It was good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. I mean, if anyone comes up with any questions for now, or if you think of any later, just feel free to message me on LinkedIn or something. Happy to connect.
Yeah, I'll be sure to hit you up on LinkedIn for sure.
All right, sounds great. Looking forward to it.
I too will hit you up on LinkedIn.
Rich can slide in my DMs. Oh man.
Oh yeah. I don't know.
All right. Great talking to you all. Hope you all have a good rest of your day and stay healthy out there. And
Thank
Richard,
you. You too.
And Richard, make sure your phone doesn't get stolen again.
I will. I'll try.
Great talking to you, Eric. Eric, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, for sure, man. Anytime.
All right. Take it easy.